Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ Gordon from JJ Meets World. Today, we're going to talk about l'amour, love. We're going to talk about the saddest thing that's ever happened in my life, or maybe almost the most pathetic thing as well. So if you are in love, if you've never been in love, if you hate being in love, good news, we cover all of it in this podcast. So sit back, relax, grab a box of tissues, and this is a cringeworthy episode in a lot of places. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
You ever see the movie The Country Bear? No, you didn't. I know you did not see Disney's The Country Bears, an adaptation of their ride, The Country Bears, into a film. I did. And
no shit.
When I went to it, the girl I took to this thing, she and I were not dating, but, doing what kids
Got
do.
it. Right.
And so we used the whole movie to pretty much just make out. Even when a family came halfway through and then sat in the way front of the theater, we just continued our little makeout session.
That was me during A Beautiful Mind.
There you go. Right. And so whenever I see the Country Bears pop up on my movies you may want to watch on Disney Plus, I think fondly of that time in my life. Mm-hmm. And, I think to myself, there are movies where I have been with, a girlfriend at the time, or just somebody that I'm casually seeing and smooching with, that I know that I paid to go see, but I did not really watch much of it anyway. And that seems to be kind of like a teenage rite of passage. The movie theater makeout is something that people get involved with. And when you think of the chick flicks out there, one of the most successful films of all time is Titanic. Mm-hmm. And I don't think James Cameron went out to make a chick flick, but he ended up getting a friggin' army of 13-year-old girls who went and saw that movie so many times. I'm going to tell you a story from Titanic that's going to blow your mind.
Okay.
I listened to a podcast called Blockbuster, the first season of which chronicles the rise of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and they do it with reenactments. And it's really well researched. I love that podcast. The second season's all about James Cameron. Very explicit, by the way. Apparently James Cameron has a real potty mouth.
Okay.
So James Cameron is making the movie Titanic, and he was not a bankable director. You think now, Terminator is such a huge movie,
right? But
when Terminator came out, it really wasn't a huge hit, and it found a life on VHS. Aliens, he everyone in Great Britain hated him because he was such a hard guy to work with. Even though I think Aliens is the best in the Alien franchise. So Titanic comes out, and he's still not a proven director. 20th Century Fox puts $125 million in this movie. Paramount, another $100 million. This is the most expensive film of all time by 3 times more than anything. So the studio is obviously squelching stories every day in Variety of a Titanic budget, this one's sure to sink.
Yeah.
And talking about why are you letting this director run rampant? So it's halfway through shooting, and James Cameron has to eat lunch by himself because nobody wants to eat lunch with him because he's they call him a tyrant on set. And he does stuff like, why are you lighting right there? I didn't tell you to light right there. And he's under so much pressure that things are not going great. Okay. So when they break for lunch, catering has a seafood soup. It's got clams in it. It's like a chowder, like a clam chowder. And they eat in the on the set where the dining hall is in the Titanic, because it's that big that the entire cast and crew, 100 people, can sit there and eat and use it for the real purpose. So James Cameron's eating by himself because no one wants to talk to him, and he has like 5 or 6 bites of soup, and he hears like, oh God. And so he looks up, and one of his crew members is kind of wobbling back and forth and then falls down. And then another woman goes, oh, and then throws up immediately. He's like, what is going on? What's going on? And so a couple more people are like, what's happening? And you're like, a woman just starts screaming. He's like, what's going on? What's going on? And he looks down and he goes, oh my God, it's the soup. There's something wrong with the soup. And he thinks that it's this shellfish neurotoxin. So you can get it from, like, it's essentially like a survival thing with these,
right.
With like a clam. It produces this toxin so fish won't eat the whole shell, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, oh my God. So he stands up and he immediately starts to feel like woozy, and, like he goes, the bowl is spinning, like on the table, like it's spinning. And so he's like, oh God. And so he runs into this small closet that's on the set, and he's in there by himself, and he's like, thinks he's having a heart attack.
Jeez.
And it goes, and so after about 2 minutes, he opens the door, walks out. There's nobody there. It's almost like they all disappeared. And he's like, what is happening? And so then he walks out of this thing, and there's people puking off, there's puking off the side of the boat, and there's other people who are walking around yelling, and he sees his first assistant director, we'll call this girl Amy, and he gets on the radio and he's like, Amy, come over here. And she's like, I can't. I'm at my birthday party right now. And he goes, what? I can see you. You're on your radio. I can see you. And she turns around and sees him, and then runs at him and stabs him in the face with a pen.
What?
Stabs James Cameron in the face with a pen. So they take these 100 people to a small hospital in Rosalita, Mexico, where they're filming, the big Titanic tank scenes. And James Cameron is trying to tell the doctor, it's a neurotoxin. It's a neurotoxin. We all ate the soup that's got neurotoxin in it. But he's just Admiral Akbar. And so he said it's just the most bizarre thing, because all of a sudden you hear and the producer is leading a line of 50 people doing a conga line through this small Mexican hospital.
Okay.
And James Cameron's like, what is going on? So they start testing everyone for this neurotoxin, and they're not identifying the neurotoxin in any of the blood. But what they do find is PCP.
Yep.
Somebody dumped a ton of PCP in this soup that then everyone ate.
Oh my God.
And so 20th Century Fox calls James Cameron the next day. And he's like, obviously, we had to shut down production for 2 days, which cost them $400,000.
Yep.
They got nothing for $500,000 on that day they were shut down. And so they're like, what is going on? Do you not have control of this set? And he's like, I just I don't know. And they're like, well, who did it? And so they involve the police with it. And that case has never been solved. So here's where I'm getting at this point. I consider myself a movie buff, and I read Entertainment Weekly every week. I'm up to date on all my stuff. How have I not heard this story in the 25 years since it happened?
That's a crazy story. I wonder what his relationship is like with that assistant director even. He was like, hey, it's cool that you stabbed me because I know you were on PCP.
Right. And I believe she said, I thought you were the devil. I thought the devil had appeared in front of me.
Right. That's
and I'm
crazy.
That is nuts. So that being said, James Cameron has had this weird, this weird fascination with his dreams. So he got directed Piranha 2. Technically, he directed 10 minutes of Piranha 2. And then this Italian filmmaker screwed him and said, well, I'm going to still call you the director because my company won't allow me to direct. And so I'm going to just use your name. And this was down in Jamaica.
I can't even imagine trying to make movies at that point. Be like, oh, I'm not even allowed. I'm just not going to do this. I'm going to quit and do something else.
Right, yeah. So he ends up having this fever dream where he's in a playground, and all of a sudden this guy starts coming towards him, and he just won't stop. And so James Cameron's trying to run away, and he's super sick at the time. So this is a fever dream. And so it's like, James Cameron, you are slated for termination. And so that's where his idea for the Terminator came from, was this fever dream of this robot chasing him, trying to kill him.
Gotcha. Okay. I was wondering if as people were throwing up, if he was thinking about that scene in Aliens with the chest burster.
Right.
When that first comes out.
Mm-hmm.
James Cameron is someone who is a mystery to me, not as a person, but as someone who, his place in the world of cinema, because how long has he been working on Avatars 2 through 12?
Right.
At how much money? But he made Titanic and Avatar 1, which made, how
tons of money.
And so basically he seems to be the only filmmaker on earth who's given as long as he wants now to make whatever. And I wonder what we're going to see from it. And got to tell you, I hate Avatar.
Yeah.
Hate that movie.
Tucker and I saw Avatar together. And I remember walking out that being like, oh, he just ripped off Fern Gully. That's all that we watched here.
Oh, God. I just don't get it, JJ. When I think of movies and dates, and what's it called? Rite of Passages.
Oh.
Right, that we all go through. I remember the movie that I thought was going to be the movie I was going to first make out at.
Ooh.
And it was not.
What was
it? It was The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser.
In 1999, huh?
Yep, and I was in the 8th grade, and shout out to Crystal St. John. She was my date, and she was my new girlfriend at that time, and we'd only been dating for like a couple of days, so we'd written notes to each other and stuff. That's all we'd done. And she had written in a note like, hey, we should try kissing. And I was like, hell yes, we should try kissing. I'd never done it at that point. And so we'd made plans that our parents dropped each of us off at the Mummy. I forget what theater was at. And I only knew how dates were supposed to go from what I'd seen in movies and TV. Mm-hmm. So I knew that at some point the guy is supposed to go and then do a kind of arm stretch and put your arm around your date. And that's what it is.
That's how you signified.
You start there, and now you're dating, and your arm is around her, and then from that point you can start smooching. Mm-hmm. And so pretty early on in the movie, I make the arm move, and she's receptive to it. So I've got my arm around her. Problem is, I'm 5'7", and she's like a solid foot taller than me at this point.
She's 6'7".
I mean, she's not 6'7".
No, I see what you're saying.
But she's definitely like
she's tall.
She's getting picked at basketball before I am.
Sure.
For sure.
Yep.
Does not matter the team. So I put my arm around her, but it's up more. So blood is draining out of it faster.
Oh no.
And it took a lot of courage to even try to do that. So now I'm going, how do I transition into into the smooching part? Like, how do I get her to start smooching with me? Like, what's the protocol? Oh, what's the protocol? And I feel self-conscious because my arm is up in the air. Like, I feel like she's my chaperone almost, right? And I wait for so long that my arm actually goes numb and starts to hurt. Well, now I think I can't take my arm off of her because it needs to be on her for us to start kissing. If I take my arm off of her, back to square one, man. I'm supposed to get some smooching going on here. And at one point, she must have been able to tell that I was in pain. She goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, my arm is a little numb." And she took my arm off of her shoulder. And I thought, "Oh, I think our relationship is over." And then after the movie was done, I was like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" She says, "No, I'm just going to call my mom." And her mom came and picked her up. And
I'm going to use this payphone and call my mom.
And about a week later was graduation that year. And her friend, I can't remember which friend it was, broke up with me for her as everyone's walking around getting yearbook signed at the very end. I couldn't find her, and I hadn't talked to her for a couple of days. And it was sort of just like in South Park where they're like, Susie breaks up. It was like Crystal breaks up. But I wasn't heartbroken. I thought, I kind of figured this was done already.
What if we continued to use our middle school and early high school years, like the things, the tropes of dating, mm-hmm. into our like adult years? So what if I had you tell my wife we were getting divorced? Instead, like, hey, JJ's divorcing you.
JJ divorces.
What? Why didn't he talk to me? Well, he just thought it'd be better if I talked to you, so that's happening. You know,
I've never. No, that's not true. I did break up for someone once. For them, I delivered a note once. That was it. But other than that, I've never. And that was a very special circumstance where it was like, no, this is the wise way to go.
Let me tell you about one of the worst feelings I've ever had. So I dated a girl my junior year of high school through pretty much the entire year. And we were, we were inseparable. Mm-hmm. So much so that like we had a couple classes together and the PDA was pretty gross. Like she would like tickle my back like all during like a class and stuff like that. And so I was also good friends at that point with our good friend Dustin. Rest in peace, Dustin.
R.I.P., buddy.
And that summer, like balancing my time between this girl and my friend group was tough because she didn't want anything to do with them. And they certainly were like, don't bring your horse-faced girlfriend, as my best man Phil Lund would tell me all the time.
I'm guessing she doesn't listen to this podcast.
Well, even if she does, she knows that he's an asshole, so it doesn't matter. And like, I always thought Phil was jealous of her, and so that's why he said cruel and hurtful things.
Dude, he is so jealous of anyone who's close to you.
Right.
That's why he said to me drunk on New Year's Eve, there should be JJ Nice podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, but it's not.
Imagine how bad it's going to be when I have a baby. He was like, a baby, you are so stupid.
That should be my baby with JJ.
So it's like early August, and I decide that I need to call it off with this girl because
this is still in high school.
Yep. And so
senior year.
Yep. Or no, it's between my junior and senior year.
Oh,
so it's that summer. Like I got to call it off with this girl because I don't see a future. And a couple weeks earlier, her sister, and her mom had all come down to my lake cabin, and my parents had invited them out to be like, hey, well, we'll do a barbecue and we can have a fun day at the lake. And her mom was telling my parents, like, they were sitting together, like drinking beer. And she's like, I just think that like, it's so great that these two are so deeply in love. And like, she's like, I think that, like we're going to see wedding bells pretty quick, And I remember my dad coming to me afterwards and being like, abort mission. He goes like, this girl's mom thinks you guys are going to get married. You got to imagine like what she thinks is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who the hell is that mom? What is she even thinking? Her daughter was a teenager. She should not be.
Sure, but it was young love.
Oh,
young love.
Please.
So
was this, how long after this did you meet the waitress?
About over a year.
Okay. So so it wasn't like that was part of the
No. I didn't leave this girl for another girl. In fact, when I broke up with her, I literally said like, it's so I can spend more time with Dustin. Because at one point she's like, I think you need to choose me or Dustin. And I'm like, well, it's gonna be Dustin. So we break up. And then this is at the very beginning years of like cell phones. So I have a cell phone. It's like a flip cell phone, but it doesn't tell me who's calling or anything like that. And Dustin and I were at Target, and we were trying to decide if we could find $5 more somewhere so that we could buy the Lego Steven Spielberg Movie Maker kit, which was essentially like a USB camera that allowed you to make stop motion movies with Legos. It was awesome, but it was like $90. So we're sitting there looking at this thing, trying to figure out how to get more money, and my phone rings and I answer it, and I'm like, hello, and she goes, hi. And this is the first time we've talked, and I'm like, oh, hey. And she's like, how are you? I said, well, I'm good. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, Dustin and I are looking at a Lego set to buy right now. And she's like, I shouldn't have done this. And she cries and hangs up. Also, by the way, I should also say this. When I broke up with her, I went to her house. Nobody was home. And I was like, I got to do this. But still, I spent like an hour there. And like, I think we made out for a little bit. Yeah. And I'm like, you gotta grow some courage here, buddy. And so I finally told her, I'm like, listen, we're done. And then so we talked, like, even she's like, oh, she's crying, and I'm trying to be like, trust me, I'm not the only guy who's ever going to be in your life.
Right.
Don't worry. And she's crying. So when I leave, she is a mess. And who wouldn't be when,
sure.
JJ Gordon's breaking up with you, right?
Right.
So I'm walking out of her house and her mom was just coming home and she's like, "Hey, JJ, how are you?" And I'm like, "Great, Deb. I'll see you later." And not having any idea that she's going to walk into like her daughter just having like an awful time.
Right.
And given, I want to also precursor this. I am no prize. So I've always been.
You're a prize to me, JJ.
Thank you. But I haven't tried to date you yet. So you don't know what that's like.
But the prize that you get in honeygrams, right? Like
yes,
if you get
right?
to the bottom of the box, that's the prize.
I'm the dust. I no nutritional value, but like if you lick your finger and touch it, like you're gonna like.
You can pour the cereal out to get the gift, but
I've told this to people all the time. I'm like, I am selfish. Like I've got a lot of great qualities, but like I always think like I have always somehow been able to like date outside of what I consider my league, right? Which is great, awesome for me. But I always tell that to girls like when we're through. I'm like, you trust me, I'm going to be a footnote at best in your story. So 2 more weeks go by, and it's the beginning of school, and my drama teacher, former guest Gwen Stark, knows that I am dating this girl because she was in theater as well. And so the first day of school, we're starting on like a Greek myth thing and performing arts. And she's like, and JJ and so, you'll be on in a group together. And it's like, because she's now grouped me together with this girl. Yeah. And so we get through it in the best way possible. But like on the 4th day of school, I get called into Mrs. Stark's office and she goes, "What's happening in your love life right now?" And I'm like, "Well, funny you say that because I did break up with this girl in August." She's like, "Oh, sorry. If I had known, I would have made a different choice." And I'm like, "Don't worry. Like we both said that we're friends still." But that was the biggest lie. We're not friends.
That's like
we're friendly. I wish her no ill will. She's got 2 like gorgeous kids.
Right.
She ended up marrying the next guy she started dating in high school. So I'm like, so there you go. It was a good thing.
The whole, the friends thing is it's the thing. Like really, what it is I hope we're not enemies. That's really what anyone is saying there. And going through the breakup is like the one thing that I don't miss about like relationships. And so like as I've been like living in as like last year was probably one of the hardest years for single people to be single people, at least at my age in this country right now, just because it was so weird. Like you can't go out. I'm 35 and I'm trying to like get on with things, but you literally can't do it. And so when you're going, well, all right, what's some silver linings here? Oh, that's true. I don't have to deal with the anxiety of knowing that I've been in one and I'm about to end it, because any time I've ended a relationship, good or bad, whether or not the relationship was just not working out, hey, let's move on, or it was toxic. No, it doesn't matter how the other person was. If I'm the one doing the breaking up, I feel like the worst person on planet Earth for a solid week after that. So it's the older I've gotten, it gets harder to go to do the breakup thing because it feels like it's just worse every time. But now I feel like, I'll take it. We'll deal with it. It's fine.
You know what the worst of the worst is though? When you break up, but you're not actually in a relationship. So let me tell you about that experience I have.
Somewhere out there.
It's the fall of 2002, and I'm eating at Applebee's literally every single night. Like that was our hangout. Mm-hmm. That was our fucking happy days like diner.
And I mean, because that was when half off after 9 was going on, right? On the apps.
And so it was cheap, right? Yep. And it was also open late, so you could go and hang out there. And I wasn't a smoker, so I wasn't going to Perkins and sitting and drinking a cup of coffee for 4 hours smoking cigarettes. So there's a waitress who the first time we really noticed her was on Halloween, and she's dressed as this like dark angel. So like instead of white billowy wings, they were black, like lacy wings and stuff like that. And we are in there so much that we form like the friendship you can make with a server who's still counting on you giving tips, but also like will end their shift and then sit with you for a little while. Right. So there's an actual like friendship part of this thing. So that's Halloween. Christmas that year, I went in on Christmas Eve and had lunch with a friend of mine, and that's where we were going to do our gift exchange. And we brought a gift for her. And so like a couple days go by and she like it's our server again. She's like, I just want to let you know that like I didn't go home for Christmas. And so this is the only gift I got this year. And it really meant a lot. And at this point, I'm crushing pretty hard on this girl. And I'm like, well, no problem. Like, I'm glad that you could do, to have this. So this girl becomes intertwined with like my circle of friends, and Easter weekend, we hang out for the first time, and she comes over to my apartment and we talk. Like, it's one of those things like we're up all night, like, and we both fall asleep on separate couches, but you feel like you've made a connection here. Also, I have to throw this one out there. My dad is dying of cancer at this time.
Oh, that's right.
And had died like 3 days before Easter. So the night that we hang out, I don't even mention, like, she has no idea that my dad has just died, which that should be a clear indicator how messed up this relationship is. And like, and I wasn't trying to keep it from her, but I also, like, this is the beginning of what I thought could have been something.
I think I think it shows how into her you were at that moment.
Right. Like, I didn't want to scare her away with like, these are the intimate details of my life.
Right.
So
that's almost akin to your previous one's mom telling your parents you're getting married. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, right. Be like, listen, I'd love to hang out. How about after my dad's funeral?
Yeah. Hey, so this is my place, and so Dad used to live here, doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
a couple days ago.
This
was where his bed was.
So, and I should have realized because like she didn't have like a close friend group. Like, so she immediately started spending every single night at my place. Like, we were inseparable.
Right. This was around the time that I was getting to know JJ really well too, and starting to hang out with JJ. And so I'd say 9 out of 10 times when I saw you, she was there too.
Yeah. And like, this is an example of like how deep we went immediately with our friendship. And this is why I thought that we were falling in love. Right. So in mid-April, she had to have her wisdom teeth out, and she's like, could you take me to the hospital? And then could I come stay at your house for a couple days while I recover?
Damn.
So
whoa.
I was to the point of where like, okay, so you're trusting me enough. Now, given we'd only hung out like outside of Applebee's a couple of times, but she's trusting me enough at this point that I will pick her up after she's been drugged and then take care of her at my apartment.
Right.
So that day I met her mom. Like, her mom drove down from where they lived in Minnesota.
Did she not have a roommate or something? Is that
she didn't have a roommate?
Okay.
And so she, like, her mom was like, okay, well, I think it's kind of weird that you two, like, what's going on here? And I'm like, don't worry. Like, your daughter's in good hands. Like, we'll take care of her. And she spent like 3 days at my house, like sleeping in my bed. And I slept on the couch because I also was at this point so infatuated and in love with her that like I put her on such a high pedestal. Right. Yeah. And if you haven't tuned this out as a listener and you're like, oh my God, this guy is nuts, you haven't heard anything yet.
Well, let's just remind ourselves though too that you're a young person at this point.
I'm 19 years old,
and you're learning what these feelings are. Yep. So I mean, even though like. No, I think so many people, regardless of gender and age, probably see themselves in the story too.
And also, this is the first person outside of my social group, like the kids that I went to high school with or that I did Trollwood with. Like, this is someone completely independent who is latching on to me.
Yeah, someone outside the band,
right? And so I think that that's a big thing too. That's why, like, I think college love is so interesting because if you fall in love with somebody who doesn't know your background and didn't play soccer with your sister growing up, et cetera, et cetera. So, so this carries on to the summer, and we are, again, like I said, inseparable. We are hanging out all the time. In fact, like, if a day goes by where we haven't talked on the phone for an hour or like hung out, I think it would be odd. Then I find out that really she's not interested in me. She's interested in my best friend. And so they hook up in my room one night during a party, and I like lose it. I can't believe this. And given we're not going out.
Right.
We're friends, and I just was reading something deeper into it.
Right. And I don't think necessarily that you were wrong to. It's not like there weren't signs there. It's just there were also other signs. that no one in that position would have seen right there. The manipulation, all that other kind of
and
stuff.
even to this day, like I blame my friend. I'm like, why would you do this to me? Like, you know that I have like these feelings.
That's true.
And that was like something that just even in the later years of our friendship, like it was something that was kind of unspoken, right? And he hooks up with her, but then decides like he doesn't want anything to do with her.
Well, of course not. He's got trees to climb.
Right, exactly. So then she doubles down like on being with me, right? Because he is still in my orbit, right? Even though she's
if she's spending time with you, maybe he gets jealous, kind of a thing. You should have done the same thing back to her.
I should have, right? Yeah. Like, so the equivalent of a year goes by, and at this point, none of my friends want anything to do with her anymore. They're like, she is bad news. Like, look at what she's doing to you. She's clearly stringing you along. If she doesn't know if she doesn't know that you're madly in love with her, she's blind,
right?
Whatever. But I don't know what to do, because this is the type of relationship where if she said, listen, never see your friends again and you and I can be boyfriend, girlfriend, I'd be like, all right, so long, friends. Right, I wouldn't even say so long, friends. I'd be like, you guys are kicked out of the apartment. Your shit is down in the stairwell.
Right. I'm going to delete all the photos of you I have.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So something has got to give, because like she goes on a date at one point, and she didn't date anyone during this time. Mm-hmm. Like she never but she goes out on a date with this guy, and I get instantly like mean about it, right? Like, why would you pick this guy? This guy's a douche. Mm-hmm. Why would you want that? And I realized, like, you know what? Something's got to happen here. So I did what made sense in my mind, which is I wrote a 10-minute play about me telling her that I'm in love with her, set on the stoop of her apartment, and then I took that play and let her read it while she was sitting on the stoop of her apartment.
I'm sorry, JJ. I'm not. I'm sorry.
I know.
I feel you. I have so many of my own examples.
I'm beaming like at this point. Like I can look back on this now and laugh. And so at the end of this thing, I'm like, so I love you, and I need to know what you think. And she's like, well, can I like think about it for a little bit? And I'm like, well, there's your answer.
Right.
So I went from being with this person 20 hours a day to like completely cutting her out of my life. And it was awful. Like at one point, like she had a ton of my stuff, and I had to send somebody over there to go like collect it, because now she's entrenched in my friend group, right? Like even though they don't like her, they're still going to do some stuff. And
even though you weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, a breakup happened.
Right. So the next time I see her is like 3 years later. I happen to be at Walmart, and she's coming down one aisle and I'm coming down another, and we both turn around and just like bebop in the other direction. Until Tucker and I are living together in his dad's house, and one fateful night, we're sitting down there, and I think your cousin was over. She had
was Megan there?
Yeah, I think she brought a couple friends, and we were hanging out in the basement, holding onto the hot water pipe because it was so warm.
Yep.
And
I missed that basement so much.
I remember it was early spring, so like there was still snow on the ground, but it was kind of wet, slushy weather. Mm-hmm. So I get a phone call, and while we're down there, and I step away and I answer, and I'm like, hello, and I hear, hi. And
you got to start screening these calls before you answer.
Well, again, like this is back in the day where like you didn't have like caller ID on your phone, right? Like these are still the early days of cell phone technology. So I go, hey, and she's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. How are you? And within 5 minutes, time had reverted itself. We were back into the old habit, and like, you tell me about this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, like you did that, blah, blah. Like, she's like, yeah, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I'm like, well, you got a lot of opportunities. And she's like, how are you with this? And I'm like, oh, it's good. But I'm not sure if this is really what, I mean,
yeah.
you know that person in your life where you can just fall back into what it is. So, okay. So while this is happening, I have a friend who gets arrested for a DUI and I am still talking to this girl and I don't want, like, I get a call waiting. So I flash it over and it's like the Cass County Jail, like bring $500. And I'm like, okay. So I flash over and then I'm like, I don't want to hang up.
Right.
Because I don't know, like, is this the last time I'm ever going to talk to her? So I talked to her for like 2.5 hours on the phone. During the time, I go to an ATM, get money, bail my friend out of jail, who's sobbing in the like front seat and like, who are you talking to? And I'm like,
which friend was this? Just give me a hint.
Oh no. I'll tell you afterwards. Okay. Like,
I want to know which friend this was.
So
I thought I did, but now I don't.
And like, given like, I should have paid attention to what's going on too with this person. Because,
wait, never mind. Okay.
Like, you know, like she clearly was in like a bad place, like, you know, having that happen to her that night. But like, I dropped her off like without really talking to her at all. Like, even when I'm sitting there waiting in the jail, like I'm trying to find the good reception spot so I can still have this conversation. And so at the end of it, we make plans to have lunch together. So we go and we have lunch together and it's like a 2.5 hour lunch. And it's, you know, like, you know, this is where I am. This is where you am. It turns out she's dating a guy I went to high school with. And I'm like, well, that's weird how these things keep, you know, coming back to it. And we've had small interactions since then, but it's not, you know, like, I know that like I could call her at a moment's notice, like if I ever needed something from her or something like that. And she could do the same like with me. But this is one of those like relationships that taught me about relationships because our breakup wasn't a breakup because we weren't going out. We were never dating. Also, by the way, she pulled such a Bush League card on me. She found out at one point where I worked. And I walked out to my car one night after work and she had put like a fake flower that was like the flower she was obsessed with. And then a note that was on there and saying like, just so you know, I did love you. And I'm like,
oh my God, come
on.
Yeah, that's a big red flag right there. Of like, yeah, I think you, well, I shouldn't. She may listen to this and I don't want her to hear me say bad things.
But you know what? And again, So here's another thing too. The guy she's married to is because of
me.
Of me.
Or of you?
Yeah. So
that was because of me.
I took her to go see
because you blamed me at one point.
Yeah, I took her to go see Almost Maine.
Okay, yeah.
At Theater B, and she saw this guy in the show, and then she ran into like people afterwards
because he gives me credit for the meeting, which is why that's what I'm.
And I think it was like the cast party for that show, where like one of the nights the cast goes out together.
Well, and I remember too being in Cloquet at the time because I was dating Summer and we were working on her movie. That was, you know, obviously someone I was at that time really into, and that's a whole other story in and of itself. And we're driving around Cloquet at night, and I get this frantic phone call from you, and it's. Dar, what would you do this for? What the fuck? Oh my God, she's dating this guy now. I mean, what do I gotta do? What do I gotta do? And I'm like, JJ, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. I really don't know.
And part of it is like,
I felt so bad.
Part of
I had done something.
Yeah, like I can't have this like enter my circle again, right? Like it'd be like someone who's a recovering alcoholic being told like, hey, good news, you've inherited a bar. I just like it. I was like, I can't believe that this is happening. Now they're married. So let's go even further into this thing and talk about how like even more messed up, because when you look at the roadmap of what happened with this girl, it's crazy. So she and I had dinner like 4 years ago, right around this time. She lived in the cities now and she'd been dating this guy the whole time. So she and this guy dated for like,
Good long time.
Like 9 years.
So,
and Jill and I dated for 12 years. Right. So like, you know, it was very similar timelines. So we get together and I had already decided that I was going to propose to Jill. And I didn't tell Jill that I was going to go have dinner with her too. Like I waited until later to tell her, which felt like a violation afterwards.
Right.
But we had a great dinner, and she's a good friend, like, right? Just like she's someone who sees past the surface and asks the questions that are important.
Well, she grows up, you grow up the old stresses go away after a while.
Yeah.
Because those stakes aren't there anymore, right? Like when you were professing your love to her, then the stakes were really, really high. Everything was wrapped up in it, and you were both so young. And now it's like, it's a good thing. It feels so nice when you can connect with someone where you had stress in your past, and you're both at that point. You're like, oh, thank God that's over,
right? And
we can just not erase as much of the awkwardness as possible.
So I had, mentioned, I'm like, I think that, I think I'm dating the girl that I know I'm dating the girl I'm going to marry. Mm-hmm. And so we had a great conversation about that. And I think she always wanted to meet Jill, but I'm like, that would not be cool. Right. Like, we're not going to go out and have a couple's meal together. It's not happening.
That's really weird.
So I proposed to Jill over the 4th of July. And one of the things right away said, like, I'd like to be married by the end of the year. Ideally, I would love to get married like in early October. And so we're talking about July to August to September to October, 3 months to plan a wedding. Early October doesn't work, so we end up getting married the last weekend in October. Again, we are planning this wedding in 3 months. It's a very short time frame, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want a long engagement. Let's get married.
Right.
This girl, after I get engaged, like a month after I get engaged, gets engaged herself. My wedding was on Saturday, October 27th. Her wedding was Sunday, October 28th. That is, I mean, any way you look at this, it seems messed up.
There's something you're leaving out, though. There's a giant chapter of this story that you're leaving out.
Which part?
The photo shoot.
Oh, yeah. Tucker seemed to get, I think it's great because you're a friend that I trust so much. Right. And so, it's no big deal.
I have to trust you. You have a photo of my penis.
I do. Yeah, I do. I can't even figure out what the year would be on this, but it's...
I mean, I could find out for you and let you know, but I'm going to guess this would have been, I want to say this was 07 or 08.
Sure. Yeah, that might make sense.
I think.
It was one of the last, we had been apart for a long time, and we just randomly would see each other every now and then.
Right, because the photo shoot was at the Main Avenue Theater, so we still had the theater, and it was after Mercedes Ray, so 7 or 8.
What I did was here, let's have lunch, but let's meet at Theater B beforehand, and I told Tucker, I'm like, listen, I need you to take some pictures for me. And so we show up, and there was a park bench on stage, that's all that was there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, would you take some pictures of us together? And they're essentially I need that keepsake, where I'm out of the realm of where I think that, we're going to get married, but a reminder.
Yeah, well, I have this 100 shot photo album on my computer that I'll have forever. And it's of 2 people that you're wondering, what's going on here? Why are these people taking
what's
photos
the relationship between these 2 people?
You're like, are they friends? Are they getting divorced? I can't tell what this is.
Mm-hmm. Did they just start a smoothie business together? And so the last time I talked to her, she's like, yeah, I have because we picked her favorite photo, and she got it printed, and she goes she's like, yeah, that still it sits next to my bed. And
her husband loves that.
But I think the thing is from her husband's perspective, her side of the story is this was a guy who was my friend.
Oh, sure. Right.
I imagine that's how it's framed.
And I keep a framed photo of him next to the bed.
Right.
Where we make love.
It is just, it's so weird. And the way that it's like being part of a tidal wave. So it keeps pulling you in and crashing you down and pulling you in and crashing down, even to the point of where at my day job, I was recently doing a remote broadcast for a nonprofit in the area, and this female doctor was talking about how she got involved with this nonprofit. And she's like, my son had a severe brain injury when he was in a boating accident that, required him to need special care. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is the kid that she took care of when she was living in town. And so I'm like, So even though I haven't talked to her in forever, he like, here's another connection. Like I'm talking to the person who was her employer that she used to talk about all the time. Also, in the movie Elf, I know this sounds like it's a hard left. The scene where Artie Lang comes out and he's dressed as Santa, right? And
like beef and cheese.
Yep. There is a little girl in the crowd who looks exactly like this woman. And every year I snap a photo of it and I send her like a text with it. And so like if you looked at my last like four or five texts with hers, it's me sending that photo and then it's her responding like, it's crazy. That little girl looks just like me. How are you? And then I don't respond.
So I think stories like these are common in many people's lives where they've got, oftentimes we refer to it as the one that got away, even if it wouldn't have been a good idea anyways. I'm
going to tell you this. This is not the one that got away, though. The one that got away is from my childhood.
Right. Well, and sometimes there are multiple ones that got away, right? Yep. Or ones that...
Sometimes you're just a bad fisherman.
Yeah. Sometimes you cast a wide net. Sometimes it's any port in a storm, right?
Yep.
Where was I going with this? I have no idea where I was going with this, but
you like this. We all have the story of the one who got away.
Oh yeah, so
that's my story,
right? But I'm trying to think. So I'm not in. It's been a while since I've been in a long-term relationship, and I can't think of a time where I was with someone where they told me the story of the one that got away. So I've always wondered what it feels like to be that side of a relationship where maybe you don't have. They don't have that story, and you don't have to face up to it. Obviously, it's her story and not yours to tell. But does Jill have a story like that you have to contend with? Is there a frame photo next to your bed that you have to look at and be like, "Oh, Chris, I hate you so much, Chris."
Mine was heartbreak on the level of like not realizing I was being taken for a ride, and Jill's is heartbreak for someone that she really loved, who was in the throes of addiction.
Gotcha. Okay. And
so Jill's I at one point just stopped telling Jill stories about like my past relationships because for her, it's hard for her to take that out of her mind.
Sure.
Right. And Jill puts a huge amount of trust in me because some of my best friends are female.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known for longer than Jill, and I share a ton of inside jokes and and I share hotel rooms with when we're on the road for line benders and stuff like that. And so what's great is I've never given Jill a reason not to trust me.
Right.
And she's gone above and beyond with that. And truthfully, like even today, talking about this non-relationship and, the stupid things that I did, thank God it worked out like that because I love Jill and I'm so glad that we're together. There's a Garth Brooks song called Unanswered Prayers that is like, talk about a story that goes along with it. And it's about a guy and his wife who they live in a small town and they go to like a Friday Night Lights football game, and it's the homecoming game. And he runs into the girl that he dated when he was in high school. And the song is about how he had been praying that like they'd stay together forever and they had true love. And those prayers went unanswered. And now he's found like even greater happiness with his wife.
Right.
And so, I'm glad things worked out the way that they did because I am incredibly lucky to have a partner who sees past all that. But man, I had to go through a lot. And I shall say, though, I did forget another huge piece of this puzzle, which was the night that I first told this girl I loved her, and she did not give into that. I did not drink at all. I wasn't a drinker, but I had my friends go get me a 12-pack of wine coolers, and I locked myself in my bedroom, and I drank wine coolers by myself, listening to the Linda Ronstadt version of Somewhere Out There from the American Tail soundtrack on repeat, to this point of where, like, if you open my iTunes library, the play count on that thing is like 6,000. More than any other song that I have in my iTunes library. And even to this point, like, when I hear that song, it brings up some deep, dark places in me.
Right, but also, thank goodness that all happened to you, because before you even met Jill, you learned what it is like to have loved and lost, and to love again and to understand what it feels like. Because I mean, you were there for that first year and a half for me after high school. I was so depressed because I was despondent because of my ended relationship from high school. And I didn't have the emotional language to even understand what came after that. But that was the first time I was ever feeling that. And boy, am I glad that I'm so glad that all of that happened. First of all, both her and I are good friends now, and we know it wouldn't have worked out. And the relationships that I've gone on to since then, I would have never had those relationships had I stayed with her. And I've learned a lesson from every single one of those too. So it feels really good to be in my mid 30s and to be not tied down, because I get the first half of my 20s was just, partying and getting drunk and hooking up with people and stuff and trying to not think about her and everything else that was going on at that time. And then the second half of my 20s into the first part of my 30s has been serial monogamy, right? So one girlfriend, and then that breaks up, and then the next one. And there were a couple of really long ones, including the longest one ever, which was about 5 years. And so now I've gone for the longest streak in adulthood. Since I even started dating at all in middle school as a single person, as someone who has zero connection to absolutely anyone in that way right now. And it's been such a crazy place to go because I wish there was an easier way to communicate this kind of perspective to someone who is a teenager.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would not, if I were talking to me as a 16-year-old right now and all the things that I know, it would be impossible for me to communicate it, even with the perfect wording, because it's a subjective feeling. You have to understand exactly how it feels. Mm-hmm. There's no exact word that goes into it. And to go through a period of time like that and then come out the other end and realize, I was making a huge ass of myself that whole time. And I was being so silly. The world is so much. My favorite line from Shakespeare is from Hamlet, when he says, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And that's a variation of there are plenty of fish in the sea. And or plenty of fish in the sea is a variation on that line. And it's not something that you can really emotionally take seriously the first time you fall in love.
Yeah.
And the first time that goes away.
Love is such a powerful emotion.
Right.
Like, it's more powerful than hate. It's more powerful than greed. Love is an end all be all.
And it's in a lot of other things, right? Like, it's mixed in with infatuation.
Yep.
Or dependency, lust, or all these other things too. And once you can get to the point of learning, listen, I'm in this phase of it, and I should, the next time I start a relationship with someone, I'm going to really pay attention to that infatuation phase, because that's fun. That's such an amazing feeling, and it doesn't stick around. But I've also gone through it enough times to not expect it to stick around, so I'm not disappointed when it goes away.
Right.
Because other things follow. If you were despondent about the infatuation phase going away, well, you and Jill would not be together right now.
Right.
That would have ended years ago.
And I love when older married couples talk about how, like, love, like the subgenre of love changes as you go along. Right. Like, your relationship becomes like someone that you can count on, and caring for each other in a not only an emotional manner but a physical manner. And like, it just amazes me. And some people never find that.
Right.
And you know what? And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Like, some people are just not built for monogamy. Some people are not built for something where they're caring for somebody else.
Well, and we all watch too many movies. So from
thanks a lot, Hollywood,
from childhood. So you're getting the wrong version. Like that's just not how it works, even in the best of times. And what's another message that gets miscommunicated is that it seems like, well, it'll never be as good as it is in the movies. No, it's actually far better than it is in the movies. Mm-hmm. The movies can't even come close to capturing what it feels like when you are in the throes of it. It's the kind of thing where people are always writing songs about it because there aren't actually words to capture it. So you have to do the best with what you can. And that always comes up short. So like, I wish I could have, well, I don't know. I say that now, right? I wish I could have communicated that to me as a 16-year-old so that I would have used that time differently, but I never. It just wouldn't have landed. It would not have landed. And I'm glad that I learned all these lessons before. I've never been married so far, and I'd love to. And so watching different people in my family, the multiple divorces that went through, that kind of ripped through my family as I grew up, all for very different reasons. At first, that made me really reticent to even consider something like getting into relationships at all at the end of the day. But now it's maybe it's just because the coronavirus happened, and everyone I know now is starting families and stuff like that. But it's God, you got to move on to that next part.
Yeah, and I haven't even had a chance to experience the love of a parent for a child.
Right.
That unconditional love.
Right.
And I love that term, unconditional love, because it really is amazing. Because listen, so much of my relationship with Jill is conditional,
all romantic relationships are like that.
Right. But the idea of unconditional love, we can scream and be so mad at each other, but
right.
You can get out your frustrations and your needs, but at the end of the day, you still love this person for
right.
their perks, for their faults, for everything like that. And that is an amazing, amazing thing. And I'm a firm believer too, in that, that love doesn't have to be reserved for only one person. You can have multiple people in your life that you have that affinity and affection for, to the point of where Tucker, if you called me tomorrow and you said hey, I'm in a bad spot, could you come bail me out of jail? I'm okay, well, I'm on the phone right now with this girl, but
yeah. Of the romantic comedies I've ever seen, the greatest romantic comedy of all time, and it will never be bested, is Much Ado About Nothing. There's just nothing better than that. And watching those characters, it makes you want to fall in love when you watch something like that. But that was back when life was nothing but hell. So this was the only good thing in it.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone they wrote endless amounts of poetry, and now it's a commodity. Right. And it's just not the same thing.
I think it's also unfair that we grew up in an era where we don't have love letters. My grandchildren will never read love letters. They'll read love tweets.
Well, maybe
or love text messages.
Well, they could. I mean, it could be something where the novelty of the thing is, or getting a letter just means more, because now it's not a thing that people normally do. I still have all of the letters from the bassoonist.
Really?
I have that entire kit, because going through that relationship, experiencing that relationship, the gift of that relationship is something that I never want to forget. And that's the only one that I've kept stuff from, because I thought this was clearly the meteor impact, right? This was the one where I learned something that there were no words for beforehand, and it's that special, and I want to keep it enshrined. But I haven't looked at it since for probably 15 years. I just know I have it.
To me, love is eating flatbread pizza when you really want Chicago-style crust.
Look at you.
You love that person so much that you'll eat flatbread.
See, I mean, if someone's I want Chicago pizza, it's you just want lasagna? We can just go get you. You just want me to dump a bunch of sauce into a bowl for you?
I mean, okay, lasagna, but you've got 2 pieces of garlic toast on the top and the bottom. If we're going to get specific, let's get specific.
I mean, we're talking about love as a commodity.
Yep.
And of course, it's Valentine's Day week.
Yeah, and I think that...
Or no, what day?
Yeah, it's the week of Valentine's. This is the day this episode is released is 6 days from Valentine's Day.
Since we know she doesn't listen, what do you got planned for Jill?
Oh, I think I nailed it this year. Yeah. So we can't go out and do things like we normally do. We're both movie people, so I'd love to see a movie. So I bought a giant canvas, and I thought we'll create a piece of art together, and then we'll hang it in our home. And so I bought us both the jumpsuits, and I've got mixed media. So I've got all different kinds of paint and stuff like that. And so I think that'll be fun. And so I'll turn the heat up in the shed, and we can do this thing together. And she has no idea that it's coming.
Sweet.
Yeah. And if she happens to listen to this episode and gets really angry about having to hear this whole story that she just didn't want to hear,
She does not listen to the show.
We'll end up having to get a cat. That'll be the only way I can apologize. Let's get a kitten.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna order myself a heart-shaped pizza.
Are you?
Maybe a taco pizza from Happy Joe's, because I haven't had a taco pizza from Happy Joe's in a long time.
Good move.
Yeah. What should I watch?
I mean, you want to watch a romantic comedy or?
I'll watch anything. I mean, it doesn't need to be romantic based. I mean, I've got the heart-shaped pizza.
Have you watched Promising Young Woman yet?
No.
Oh, you should put that in your list because that movie messed me up for a while.
Okay.
Like it was real good stuff. You know, when I think of the movies I loved from this last year, you know, romantic comedies aren't out there, which I think we're going to see a slew of them because that's pure escapism.
Right.
And that's what people are going to want is they're going to want all these like stories of love and, you know, like Behind the Mask.
Well, especially if there is a COVID boom, if there is a baby boom of some kind from there. Yeah, it's going to coincide.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a great romantic comedy movie that I think is like the end all be all works for everybody.
I might just pull up Much Ado About Nothing again. I mean, that's the version that I like watching.
The Joss Whedon one, black and white one?
The Kenneth Branagh. I've really fallen out of liking Joss Whedon, but the Kenneth Branagh, I'm blanking on names right now. Everyone else who's in that show, that movie, but his former wife. I'm blanking on names right now. Anyways, that's the one I like to watch. I try to forget that Keanu Reeves is in it. As Don John, which is the character that I played when we did that, which is the most worthless. That is both the best romantic comedy of all time and has the most worthless character in all of Shakespeare, which is Don John.
Okay. You should watch the movie Don John with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Scarlett Johansson. It is one of the most realistic relationship movies that I have ever seen, and it's about a guy who's addicted to pornography. And it is like the things that you do, like in the way you change yourself for another person because you want their affection so much. I remember seeing, and Tony Danza shows up out of nowhere, and you're like, yes, Tony Danza. Brie Larson is in it too.
Okay.
It's an amazing cast, and it's like a younger Brie Larson.
Okay, she's pretty old now.
Well, I mean, younger compared. She's pre Captain Marvel, pre Academy Award.
I think isn't she 35? Anyways,
I don't know.
Every time
she's great in 21 Jump Street.
Gotcha.
She's great. Well, that wraps up this episode of JJ Meets World. It's being released around Valentine's Day, but let's face it, these are universal things we're talking about. And don't feel guilty at all at laughing at my story. I hope it brought you some entertainment value because one day I'm going to get this play published. And then what I'm going to do is make sure community theaters all around her mount it all the time. So she has to constantly relive it. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I mean, the thing is like, I could be leading 2 lives right now. I might have a family in Kansas City. You don't know that for a fact.